been doing anti-racism facilitating and trainings for about 10 years. And I first started in Bellingham when I was going to college, and I got introduced to this idea of being white. And I was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. My whole life, I'd grown up white, but what does that really mean? And so I got really excited after I saw the movie The Color of Fear. And I heard some mm-hms and see some nods out there. And so I was like, oh, you know, I started facilitating conversations on campus about that movie, kind of right at the time that it first came out. And I remember going home during the vacation and just getting into these arguments with my mom. And we just have these conversations that were just really intense conversations about what it means to be white, about what it means to be, you know, liberal, and I was born in a commune, and how does that play into our experiences, and all this crazy, you know, so I'm from this, now you know my family pretty much, this white, liberal, very well-meaning family, and so we got into these really intense conversations, and then, so from there, I continued to facilitate, continued to share my passions with my family and the people around me, and was involved with the Thurston County Study Circles on Race, and then eventually came to work for, I had my teaching certificate, taught for several years at the elementary level, and then came to work for the Seattle, including a couple of tonight's kids, and then came to work for the Seattle School District's Equity and Race Relations Department with Dr. Hollins. And it was early on in my work for the Seattle School's Equity and Race Relations Department that I got a call from the center school. And they said, hey, will you do a presentation for us? And I was like, oh, sure, yeah, I can do a presentation for you. We talk about white privilege. Oh, yeah, sure, I can do that. And they're like, yeah, and, you know, we're a school. And I'm like, so who's my audience? And they're like, oh, it's about 200 people, you know, high school students and the teaching staff. And I'm like, okay, fine, no problem. How long is my presentation? Oh, about 20, 30 minutes. I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, what do you really want me to do? And they're like, well, we'd like you to just give a speech and just talk about your experiences. And, okay, yeah, where do I go? Oh, it's the center house stage. And so I hang up the phone, and I realize that I'm about to give a presentation in the Seattle Center House to 200 people that I do not know, and including the vendors there, and anybody else who happens to be walking by. But I share that experience because I think that's sometimes where this work takes us, that we kind of dive in and say, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that, and then you're in the middle of the situation, and you're like, how the heck did I get here? And so I hope to share with you some tips on how to handle those situations when you find yourself in it, when you know that you're passionate about it, you know that you want to do it, and you just dive in, and then you're like, okay, somebody save me. But the really cool thing about that presentation was that when I was up on stage, it went beautifully. And the one point that I really floundered, and I get choked up every time I say this, is that I looked at the audience and I saw my mom sitting there. And I just got choked up on stage when I recognized her and just said, you know, thanks for coming, thanks for being here. And so it just kind of brings that circle, you know, where you just don't know how much people grow and change and how much you influence them when you engage in just that one-on-one conversation.